International Relations, last year student. I'm the founder and the president of the International Relations Club, and I will be the moderator of the session. Ladies and gentlemen, we will start the session formally with the recitation of the Holy Quran. For that, I would like to call upon Mr. Harun Rashid from BS International Relations to recite the holy verses.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صدق الله العظيم.
Now, I would request all the guest members and the attendees to please rise in the honor of national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most volatile places on earth is the Kashmir region. India and Pakistan have fought 3 major and 2 limited wars as a result of their intense rivalry over Kashmir. Given that Pakistan and India are both nuclear powers, the conflict poses a threat to regional as well as global security. Kashmir remains the oldest unresolved UN agenda item. In a highly controversial move, Articles 370 and 35A of the Indian Constitution were abrogated unilaterally in October 2019 by the Modi government, thereby finishing the special status of Indian occupied Kashmir and snatching the separate identity of Kashmiris. Pakistan strongly condemned the move to impose settler colonialism in Indian Muslim majority area, aiming to alter the territory's demographics and patterns of land ownerships while denying Kashmiris their means of subsistence. Unfortunately, adding further to the insult of international organizations, the Indian Supreme Court also vowed in favor of Modi's act of snatching Kashmir's special status. Pakistan supports the right of self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, which is protected by several UN resolutions, including UNICP Resolution 1949, that states that the question of accession of the state of Jammu and Kashmir to India or Pakistan will be decided through the democratic method of an free and impartial plebiscite. The seminar titled Revisiting Kashmir Issue, Key Insights into the Strategic Significance and Current Developments shall dilate upon the new normal being adopted by global powers, especially the India in relation to the most debated Kashmir issue since 1948. The world community has to act fast, lest it's too late that can lead to a nuclear war in the South Asian region, besides cementing mistrust on the credibility of the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me exercise my privilege to introduce the first keynote speaker of the session, Professor Dr. Huma Baqai. Professor Dr. Huma Baqai is the Rector of Millennium Institute of Technology and Entrepreneurship. She has previously served an Associate Professor of Social Sciences and Liberal Arts and was also former Associate Dean, Faculty of Business Administration at IBA, Karachi. She has been working with both national and international media as an international relations expert and political analyst for more than 2 decades. She has authored 3 books, and her recent work being collected works on foreign affairs and security policy, published in 2023. In addition, she has authored 29 national and international research articles published in renowned journals. Dr. Baqai is a Senior Vice Chairperson, Karachi Council for Foreign Relations, and serves on several advisory and governance boards. She will talk upon the courage and the unbroken spirits that echoes through the resilient Kashmiri movements and their hope for tomorrow. Professor, it is our privilege to have you here. Please come on stage.
So they get the technology out of the way. I will do a formal thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. But more importantly, I'm very grateful to both DHA Suffa and CISSS for doing a collaborative event here at DHA Suffa. DHA Suffa is very close to my heart, and so is CISSS, because my last book that the gentleman here just mentioned was inaugurated here. My first very high-profile inaugural, if I may say so, happened here. We do 5th Feb, and in lieu of that, we are doing this on 2nd Feb every year. But this particular year, I think the importance has upscaled itself to a point of almost urgency. And why do I say that? Students, especially at the back, and others, I say that because one of the most critical aspects of the situation is that India may want to Palestinize Kashmir. And we know that there were conversations between the Israeli Prime Minister and the Indian Prime Minister, where the Indian Prime Minister was actually told categorically by the Israeli Prime Minister as to go for the kill. Those were the words used. So with now that what has happened has made it even more critical for us to continue to highlight the issue. Also, the backdrop of how international institutions and United Nations, I mean, the whole question of whether United Nations has remained relevant or not in today's world is become the question in international forums today. Are we heading towards another situation where League of Nations collapsed and Second World War happened? So will United Nations collapse and we will, God forbid, move towards a Third World War? And we all know that there are students of international relations here, that every pundit of international relations has categorically said that the Third World War, if it happens, God forbid it happens, it's going to happen on the sea lanes. And the situation on the Red Sea is not pretty. And now nothing mattered to the international community. What has mattered to the international community at the end of the day is that their supply chains are getting choked. So they thought they could do anything and everything to Gaza and the Palestinian people. I was in conversation with a very senior American diplomat, and I said, the Palestinian conflict. And they said, no, it's not Palestine. It's Gaza and Hama. It's Hamas and Israel. So Abraham Accords, from an Arab-Israeli conflict, it became a Israeli-Palestinian conflict when Abraham Accords happened. And today, it's not even Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is Israel and Hamas. So constantly shrinking the ambit of the conflict to suit their situation. And that is critically important. And as students of international relations, it is critically important for you to understand how power relations and power dynamics eventually impact the output of the conflict. It is the power equation. You think Israel can do this on its own unless it had the backing of the international community, especially those very powerful in the corridors of power and on decision-making tables? Do you think it was a possibility? No. Today, what India is doing, do you think India could have gotten away with what it was doing, not just in Kashmir, but to the whole minority communities, even its own people, Dalits, unless it had acquired a certain economic status and a strategic place for itself where the West saw itself in convergence with it to let it go, let it do what it does? And India has used it not just in Kashmir, it has actually done the whole concept of hard hedging is the new mantra of international relations, where states like the India, which is called middle power, use their power, impact, clout, reach, economic paradigms, middle class economic power to get away with issues like Kashmir. So before I open up, I would actually want to reiterate the fact that it's critically important to keep the issue alive today. Because what India would want essentially is to kill it before it even, or to kill it. It is already doing it consistently. It is not a coincidence that the decision from the courts came when it came. So these are things that I will try to run through in my presentation to you, but I'm actually happy that this is happening, and I'm even more happy that I see students here. So I titled my presentation, Echoes of Courage and Unbroken Spirit, the Resilient Kashmiri Movement. When they changed the status of the Kashmir, there was a hue and inquire, but from the Indian side, it was said that it is 72 hours that we will have the situation under control. It has been 3 years now. And that is the resilience of the Kashmiri people. And today they say it is not just the youth, it is 8 to 80. That is the demographic framework of resistance in Kashmir, from 8 years to 80 years. यहाँ से बता दीजिए, यहाँ से करिए, यहाँ से okay, there. So Kashmir has long been a land of paradoxes, a paradise marred by conflict, a cradle of rich cultural heritage, overshadowed by political turmoil. I can name at least 5 movies churned out from India that constantly talk about the tourism potential of Kashmir and how they held a summit there and how now they want to project Kashmir as the paradise with no problem. There is trouble in paradise. The Kashmiri people, known for their resilience and indomitable spirit, have endured decades of unrest and uncertainty. Every humanitarian violation that you can think of happens, from mass graves to disappearances to torture to rape as a weapon of war to humiliation and to economic cullouts. All of these are strategy. They actually have a strategy to kill, eliminate the young generation. So that what we call genocide in Gaza has been going on in Kashmir for years, a silent genocide. And then they have a multi-pronged approach to also create problems in Pakistan, on Pakistan's side. The Gilgit-Baltistan situation has its indigenous roots, but also has an external dimension. The echoes of courage resonate through the valleys, and the unbroken spirit of the Kashmiri movement continues to be a testament to the unwavering resolve of a people yearning for peace, justice, and self-determination. Some of you may know that when what is it? 8339? 378. जब हम उसकी बात करते हैं, तो हम usually ये कहते हैं कि हम इसके खिलाफ हैं. हम तो उसके भी खिलाफ थे जब वो आया था. Pakistan was against that. And now they have completely changed the so-called constitutional umbrella under which Kashmir was to exist until UN resolutions were to take place. And also, another point where you should say this all the time, there are 2 biggest violators of United Nations resolutions. Names? India and Israel. And this time, Israel has literally throttled and destroyed the United Nations. The Kashmiri freedom struggle is a classic example of unprecedented oppression by the world's second largest state on one side, and unyielding courage, resolve, determination, and perseverance by over 9 million innocent people on the other side. Exactly the situation in Gaza, their resilience, we need to salute their resilience. अभी इजराइल ने उनको कहा कि हम 2 महीने के लिए जंग बंदी करते हैं, आप सारे होस्टेजेस दे दें. इसका मतलब है कि तकरीबन 100 से ऊपर दिन हो गए वायलेंस को। इस वायलेंस के बावजूद वो अपने होस्टेजेस नहीं निकाल सकेंगे गाजा से। They have flattened Gaza, but the hostages are still under the control of the Hamas. और अभी उन्होंने तंग आके हाथ जोड़ के कहा 2 महीने के लिए बंद करते हैं, तो उन्होंने कहा नहीं, आप जंगबंदी का कंप्लीट करेंगे तब होस्टेजेस रिलीज होंगे। इस रेजिलियंस की, इन 50 के अराउंड इन होस्टेजेस को रखने की, अपनी रेजिस्टेंस को जिंदा रखने की जो कीमत पैलेस्टाइन ने दी है, हम सबको कोशिश करनी है कि ये सब कश्मीर में ना हो। Another defining moment for the Kashmir freedom struggle was on August 5, 2019, when India passed a resolution to revoke the autonomous status with special rights and privileges of Indian administrated Jammu and Kashmir. When this status was given, Pakistan was against it because it was a diluted status. It was in violation of what was our demand and what was a demand as per the UN resolution. Having said this, even this is being revoked. India's decision to revoke Article 335A and 370 is not only in contravention to the Indian Constitution, but also reflects a renunciation of the democratic, federalist, and secular ideals that India has projected itself with for so long. अब तो उन्होंने अपना नाम भी तब्दील कर लिया। On 11 December 2023, a panel of 5 judges unanimously ruled to uphold Modi's decision, confirming the claim that the special status for Jammu and Kashmir had only been temporary. This is saffronized. I call this saffronization of the Indian judiciary. But this saffronization of the Indian judiciary, and there is another institution that they completely saffronized, and that other institution was the academia. तो ये इन्होंने समझिए जमीन बनाई थी पिछले कई सालों से। किसी ऐसे जज का अपॉइंटमेंट कोर्ट्स में नहीं हुआ है, हायर कोर्ट्स में नहीं होता था जिसकी एलिजेंस जो हो वो बीजेपी के साथ ना हो। किसी ऐसे जज का अपॉइंटमेंट ही नहीं हो सकता था। उसके बाद उन्होंने यही सूरत हाल शुरू की एकेडेमिया में। किसी ऐसे वाइस चांसलर का अपॉइंटमेंट नहीं हो सकता था जिसकी सोच जो है वो इंडिया का जो नया भूत इंडिया को सवार हुआ है उससे इनहराफ करती हो, या वो सेक्युलराइजेशन की बात करता हो, या वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म की बात करता हो, या वो लिबरल वैल्यूज में बिलीफ रखता हो। ऐसे वाइस चांसलर्स को अपॉइंट नहीं किया गया। तो जमीन साजी कहाँ से हुई? जो कुछ आज इंडिया में हो रहा है, जिसका इंडिया वाइड में बहुत नुकसान उठाएगा। एक जुमला है जो मैं आखिर में कहूंगी और हमेशा कहती हूँ। तो उन्होंने एक तो जहन साजी यूनिवर्सिटीज में शुरू की। जब आप यूनिवर्सिटीज में जहन साजी करते हैं वो बहुत खतरनाक जहन साजी है, वो आपका कल और आपका आज होता है। और फिर जुडिशरी, तो जो 2 जगहें जहां से रोक पड़ सकती थी वहां पे पहली तैयारी की गई, फिर आगे बढ़ा गया। सो आई कॉल इट द सेफ्रनाइजेशन ऑफ द इंडियन जुडिशरी एंड द सेफ्रनाइजेशन ऑफ द इंडियन एकेडेमिया। It ordered that India held Kashmir restored to the same statehood as any other Indian state with no separate autonomy rights at the earliest as soon as possible. जब मैं ये भी आपके गोशगुजार कर दूं, and I think some of you may know this, जब ये पास हुआ, जब ये हमने उनका स्पेशल स्टेटस रिवोक किया था, तो लोकसभा में और कांग्रेस के लोगों ने कहा था कि ये सबसे बड़ी पॉलिटिकल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल चोरी है, बल्कि डाका है, क्योंकि उस वक्त कश्मीर अंडर फेडरल रूल था, यानी कि कश्मीर की अपनी कोई रिप्रेजेंटेशन नहीं थी। वहां पे एक गवर्नर लगा हुआ था, उसकी असेंट लेकर इन्होंने ये पहले किया था। तो उस वक्त भी लोकसभा में कहा गया था, उनके अपने लोगों ने ये बात कही थी कि ये गलत है, ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल चोरी है, ये खिलाफ है, बरखिलाफ है इंडिया के असूलों के। वो आवाजें अब कमजोर होती जा रही हैं, उसकी खत्म होती जा रही हैं इंडिया। Saffronization is the politics of right-wing Hindu nationalists, Hindutva, that want the Indian state to adopt policies that recall and glorify Hindu cultural history and heritage of India at the expense of other religions, all other religions. Under the Modi regime, extremists have been acting upon the ideology of Hindutva, and an unprecedented rise in Hindu fanaticism, persecution of religious minorities such as Muslims, Christians, and Sikhs have been observed. However, Muslims have become become special target of this extremist ideology. आप में से बहुत लोग इंडिया गए होंगे, मेरा भी जाना हुआ, अब तो खैर वीज़ा नहीं मिलता, जब मैं अपना PhD कर रही थी तो ज़माने में मैं जा रही थी, तो जो गुर्बत के बदतरीन इलाके होते हैं वो मुसलमानों के इलाके। एक ऐसा रेस्टोरेंट है वहाँ पे जो ग्लोबल लिस्टिंग में है, लेकिन वहाँ रास्ता इतना गंदा है कि आप पैदल चल के नहीं जा सकते, इतनी सीवरेज, और ये बाय डिजाइन है। Under the Modi regime, extremists have been acting upon the ideology of Hindutva, as I think I read that. The Indian judiciary is proving its saffron colors more explicitly in recent times through various verdicts that blindly favor the ruling government without any legality. I say this without any qualms that India is moving towards one-party system. But when you move towards one-party system, there is one thing very critical that you need to have. There's one very important aspect, and that is unprecedented economic growth. India has acquired that unprecedented economic growth to get away with this. So today the Indian stock exchange has bypassed the Hong Kong stock exchange. Students, that's where there are lessons for us. That is where the lessons are. The resilient Kashmiri movement. This is just the timeline that I added. I'm not going to read through it. I'll only come towards the end. Yes, so attack on the Indian Parliament happened that escalated tensions. Every act that happens, the tussle that has been reinitiated in the Western world, and the Palestinian issue dobara zinda hua hai. This is what has happened. So, ये मेरा perception है, बिल्कुल गलत हो सकता है, but I think this was a calculated move by the Hamas to keep the resistance alive. Otherwise, it would have been buried. Ibrahim Accord ने आधा दफन किया था, ये जो convergence होने जा रही थी, इसके बाद पूरा दफन हो जाता। Courageous struggle for self-determination. The core of the Kashmiri movement lies in the demand of self-determination. It is not about it becoming a part of Pakistan. It is about self-determination, which is a right embodied in the UN Charter. The people of Kashmir have consistently voiced their aspirations for autonomy and the right to decide their own political future. The echoes of courage and heard in the streets filled with protesters, in the voices of poets and the writers expressing the collective pain, and in the resilience of a population that refused to be silenced. और यहाँ पे हमेशा मुझे अरुंधति का वो I urge you to read Arundhati Rai. She's an Indian author but has global recognition. तो उससे जब कश्मीर पे बात हुई, उसने बहुत खूबसूरत बात कही। उसने कहा था कि कश्मीर को हिंदुस्तान से आज़ादी नहीं चाहिए, हिंदुस्तान को कश्मीर से आज़ादी चाहिए। And I think there is a lot of depth in this sentence. There's a lot of depth. Look to the lengths that India has gone for Kashmir. ये फेस है हुर्रियत का. So this is a man who fought resiliently for Kashmiri's freedom. हर कश्मीर जो उनका freedom fighter है has come under tremendous torture, confinement, you name it. So this is Saeed Ali Shah Gilani. This is Yasin Malik. इनकी जो वाइफ हैं वो तो केयरटेकर की कैबिनेट में भी हैं शायद और पाकिस्तान में हैं. So this is the Kashmiri separatist leader. This is Burhan Muzaffar Ghani. I thought I'll bring these pictures to you because I think the youth should know them, should recognize them. So, and the human rights violations in Kashmir are also unprecedented. जब उन्होंने ये pellet guns इस्तेमाल की थी तो उस साल को अंधी आँखों का मौसम के नाम से याद किया जाता है क्योंकि इतनी लोगों ने अपनी आईसाइट खोई थी जब इंडिया ने ये हथियार इस्तेमाल करना शुरू किया. So the Kashmiri movement has also been marked by widespread human rights concerns. Reports of extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, and the use of pellet guns has sparked international outcry. अभी आपको पता है जो ब्रिटिश हाई कमिश्नर हैं सायरा लूनी, she wanted to visit Kashmir and India did not allow it. This is what it does to you. ये जो illegal pellet guns हैं, human rights violation in Kashmir, इससे usually आँख ज़ाया हो जाती. आंखें ज़ाया हो जाती। और इसीलिए जब ये इस्तेमाल हुई थी तो उस साल को अंधी आंखों का मौसम कहा गया था। During the mass uprisings in 2016, Indian security forces and police extensively used shotgun pellets to subdue Kashmiri protesters. Many of the young men and teenagers, more than 1,100 people, were partially or fully blinded in what was characterized by many as the world's first mass blinding. Mass blinding. ना जीने को छोड़ा ना मरने को छोड़ा. Imagine. Or again, youth. Young bachche. The resilience of the Kashmiri people is still evident in their continued struggle for justice and accountability. The unbroken spirit of the movement is reflected in the voices that refuse to be stifled, demanding an end to impunity and a commitment to human rights. This continues. Amnesty International has consistently urged the government of India to launch investigations into hundreds of unidentified mass graves discovered since 2006 in Jammu and Kashmir. 2006 से mass graves वहाँ मिलती हैं एक कब्र में 5, 6, 7 कभी 10, 12, 15 लोगों को भी वो literally कूड़े की तरह डाल के कवर कर देते हैं. The international organization has called for an investigation that must be independent, impartial, and follow international standards. The grave sites are believed to contain the remains of victims of unlawful killings, enforced disappearances, torture, and other abuses which occurred in the context of armed conflicts persisting in the state since 1989. 1989 से हमारी डिमांड है. ये जुमले आपकी गुफ्तगू में आने चाहिए. 1989 से हम इंडिपेंडेंट इन्वेस्टिगेशंस डिमांड कर रहे हैं. Thousands of unmarked graves have reportedly been found in Kashmir across several districts. There are more human rights. और आप जितना मतलब जब आप पढ़ते हैं, मैं तो थोड़ी देर पढ़ के फिर रुक जाती हूँ. And I need to thank Sundar sitting here for all the stats that you see on the board here. So she's worked on the presentation for me. The Association of Parents of Disappeared Persons and a human rights group in Kashmir maintains that at 8,000 to 10,000 people have disappeared in the decade-old conflict and accuses government forces of staging gun battles to cover up the killings. So I was a part of an interviews that were held in Kashmir, online थे. उसमें बहुत सारे माएँ ये कहती थी कि बाप छुप गए हैं और महीने में बस पैसे कहीं ना किसी तरह करके भिजवाते हैं. और जो बच्चे हैं वो कहती हैं मुझे पता है कि सुबह यूनिवर्सिटी जाएगा, लेकिन मुझे ये नहीं पता कि यूनिवर्सिटी से वापस आएगा, क्योंकि या तो ये उठा लिया जाएगा या ये पहाड़ों पर चढ़ जाएगा. इसको इतना गुस्सा आया हुआ होगा कि ये रेजिस्टेंस का हिस्सा बन जाएगा. और कहते हैं मुझे नहीं पता कि मेरा बच्चे को उठा लिया है या मेरा बच्चा रेजिस्टेंस का हिस्सा है, क्योंकि मेरा कोई कॉन्टैक्ट नहीं है. किसी ने कहा मेरा 6 महीने से कोई कॉन्टैक्ट नहीं है, किसी ने कहा मेरा 10 महीने से कोई कॉन्टैक्ट नहीं है. एंड द स्टोरीज कंटिन्यू. The Indian government had drastically intensified the repression of rights in Jammu and Kashmir since the change in the status of the region. The civil society at large and journalists, lawyers, human rights defenders have faced relentless interrogation, arbitrary travel bans, revolving door detentions, and repressive media policies while blocking access to appeals for justice in courts and human rights bodies. आप वहाँ जा ही नहीं सकते. They've blocked it to their own people also. For 3 years now, civil society and media in Jammu and Kashmir have been subject to a vicious crackdown by the Indian government, which is determined to stifle dissent using draconian laws, policies, and unlawful practices in their arsenal. ये भी आपको, I think most of you know this, कि जो forces, Indian forces deploy होती हैं कश्मीर पे, उनके ऊपर कोई military discipline और accountability लागू नहीं होती. वो कुछ भी कर सकती हैं, कोई सवाल नहीं, no questions asked. And by the way, Akar Patel is an Indian. So again, some very hurting pictures, but these are real pictures of what happens in Kashmir every single day. So what you need to understand is that this happens every single day. Mera time khatam ho gaya to mujhe batayega. And then there is, of course, the digital apartheid, which is India's internet ban. The Indian government has total control on information coming out of the region after passing restrictive media policies such as the 2020 revised media policy and 2021 film policy. तो आप ये तो फिल्म करके फिल्मों में दिखा सकते हैं. India's communication blackout, a collective punishment and digital apartheid for the Kashmiri people. Digital rights activists have consistently denounced the internet restrictions, and some have called them far worse censorships than anywhere else in the world. By the way, Kashmir is also called the largest open prison on the face of earth. गजा के लिए ये कहा जाता था, अब तो गजा तो रहा ही नहीं, लेकिन उससे पहले भी कश्मीर को अब the largest open air prison in the world कहा जाता है. The internet bans have been aimed at preventing anti-India protests and attacked by rebels who have fought for decades for the region's independence. According to Amnesty International, there have been at least 60 instances of crackdowns on journalists and human rights defenders in Kashmir since August 2009. The multifaceted and targeted denial of digital rights is a systemic form of discrimination, digital repression, and collective punishment of the region's residents, particularly in light of India's long history of political repression and atrocities. I need to finish? Right. This is, I just wanted to quickly, I'll just do the heading. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? 2 minutes? Lack of accountability for the security forces. ये सबसे ज़्यादा draconian law है इंडिया में. So ये numbers हैं, custodial killings हैं, arrests हैं, houses or buildings have been destroyed, women widowed, children orphaned, women have been gang raped or molested over the last 3 decades. ये documented है. जो undocumented है, unreported है, वो इससे बहुत ज़्यादा है. Lack of accountability for the security forces personnel in Jammu and Kashmir. The Public Safety Act for killing and arbitrarily arresting individuals for indefinite periods. No questions asked. Amnesty International has pointed out that Muslim majority population in Kashmir Valley suffer from repression tactics of the security forces. ये फिर एक और report है. This is my conclusion. Over the years, India has not only restored to brutal methods of oppression, such as physical violence, torture, fake encounters, rape, unlawful persecution, it also concocted an alternative history. So they constantly निशान मिटा रहे हैं ना, जैसे आप निशान मिटाते हैं ना एक जनरेशन का. एक तो फिजिकल जेनोसाइड होता है, आप लोगों को मारते हैं. दूसरा आप एक हिस्ट्री को किल करते हैं. सब जब आप हिस्ट्री को डिस्टॉर्ट करते हैं, आप माजी भी खत्म करते हैं. तो माजी खत्म करते हैं, हिस्ट्री डिस्टॉर्ट करके, प्रेजेंट खत्म करते हैं आपको आज मार के, और फ्यूचर खत्म करते हैं आपको किसी ग्रोथ से बाहर रखकर. So there is a 3-pronged strategy to completely eliminate the Muslim identity of India. The people of the Kashmir know that their fate is not in their hands, it is in the hands of those who wield power. While the Kashmir movement remains a beacon of courage and resilience, the path to resolution is fraught with challenges. The geopolitical complexity, historical grievances, and the entrenched position of various stakeholders make finding a lasting solution a formidable task. The unbroken spirit of the movement, however, persists in the collective will of the Kashmiri people to continue their struggle for a better future. These are my all references. Sundar, thank you for the presentation. I think she did a good job. And thank you for your time and attention. Students, once again, we have to constantly raise voice so that Kashmir is not Palestinized. Thank you so much.
Now, I would like to introduce our next eminent speaker, Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah.
Well, at the outset, let me join Dr. Huma Baqai in thanking the leadership of DHA Suffa University for hosting this trilateral event. It is for the first time that 3 institutions have joined hands to organize this seminar on Kashmir. That is Center for International Studies Sindh, that I represent, and DHA Suffa University and Dr. Saba's MiTE, and we are very grateful to her for being the keynote speaker at this event. Dr. Saba's presentation was so comprehensive that there's very little left for me to talk about, but I'll make an effort. The Jammu and Kashmir dispute is one of the oldest unresolved disputes on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. India has been taking different steps to strengthen its occupation of Jammu and Kashmir since 27 October 1947, when it forcibly took control of the former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. India itself took Jammu and Kashmir dispute to the UN Security Council in 1948. Since then, the UN Security Council has remained seized of the Kashmir dispute under the agenda item India-Pakistan question and passed 11 resolutions between 17 January 1948 to 2nd December 1957. Dr. Saiba rightly pointed out that it's important to keep the Kashmir issue alive on the UN agenda. India has tried many times in the past to get it out of the UN agenda. However, I should say that it's the success of Pakistan's diplomacy that we have been able to keep it alive on the UN agenda. India sent its forces to Kashmir in October 1947 and illegally occupied Kashmir. Due to response from tribals and Pakistani forces, Indian forces suffered defeat in many areas. India therefore rushed to the UN to place the Jammu and Kashmir problem before the world body. The intention was to ask the world community to acknowledge Pakistan's aggression on the people of Jammu and Kashmir and to force Pakistan to withdraw its troops from the state so that final solution to the question of the state's accession could be found. The UN Security Council resolutions, number 1, affirm the right of Kashmiris to self-determination. Number 2, state that the final disposition of the state of Jammu and Kashmir will be made in accordance with the will of the people expressed through the democratic method of a free and fair, impartial plebiscite conducted under the auspices of the United Nations. And number 3, the resolutions stress that no side will take any measure that will prejudice the final outcome of the dispute. Despite commitments made by the Government of India to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, Security Council and Pakistan, India has refused to implement the UN Security Council resolution on Jammu and Kashmir. The Indian Constituent Assembly adopted Article 370 of its constitution, which came into effect on 26 January 1950. Dr. Saiba had referred to this article. The article ensured a special status and internal autonomy for Jammu and Kashmir, with Indian jurisdiction in occupied Kashmir limited to 3 areas: defense, foreign affairs, and communications. On 5 August 2019, India scrapped the special status of the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and bifurcated it into 2 union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. India has since started a process to change the demographic structure and political landscape of occupied Kashmir. Recently, Indian Supreme Court also endorsed the illegal actions of Indian government of 5 August 2019. India's illegal and unilateral actions of 5 August 2019 were in blatant violation of the UN Security Council resolutions. Both China and Pakistan reacted strongly to India's illegal actions of incorporating occupied Kashmir and Ladakh as Union territories. Pakistan condemned the Indian action and reiterated that no unilateral step by the government of India can change the disputed status of Kashmir as enshrined in the UN Security Council resolutions. As the party to this international dispute, Pakistan will exercise all possible options to counter the illegal steps. Pakistan reaffirms its abiding commitment to the Kashmir cause and its political, diplomatic, and moral support to the people of occupied Kashmir for realization of their right to self-determination. China deplored and firmly opposed India's unilateral actions and stated that it challenged China's sovereignty and interests. It is not effective in any way and will not change the fact that the area is under China's actual control. In response to Indian illegal actions, a Security Council meeting was called on 16 August 2019 in New York to discuss the situation created by Indian revocation of the special status of occupied Jammu and Kashmir and its inclusion in Indian Union territory as Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. None of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council blocked this meeting. Another Security Council meeting on the same issue was held on 15 January 2020. At the meeting, UN Secretary General underscored the need for the Jammu and Kashmir dispute to be resolved in accordance with the provisions of the UN Charter and the UN Security Council resolutions. Russia, which did not block the meeting despite repeated Indian requests, inter alia called for the Kashmir dispute to be decided in accordance with the UN Security Council resolution. This is not their usual position. The convening of the UN Security Council meetings on 16 August and another one in January 2020 on Jammu and Kashmir after more than 60 years was a powerful message that the annexation of Jammu and Kashmir was not an internal matter of India. It also proved that the situation provoked by India posed a serious threat to peace and security in the region and beyond, given that both Pakistan and India possess nuclear weapons. Human rights situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has worsened significantly following India's illegal and unilateral actions of 5 August 2019. In her presentation, Dr. Sahiba even showed pictures of the victims of this Indian terrorism. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights published 2 reports in 2018 and 2019, extensively documenting India's systematic and flagrant human rights abuses in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. They also draw attention towards the persisting climate of impunity enjoyed by the Indian occupation forces under the draconian Armed Forces Special Powers Act and Public Safety Act. In addition to the UN, Pakistan has also been raising the Kashmir dispute in the OIC, which has been extremely supportive of Pakistan in this regard through the adoption of several resolutions. OIC supports the legitimate and just struggle of the people of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir for their right to self-determination. OIC welcomed the UN Security Council meetings of 16 August 2019 and 15 January 2020 to consider the situation arising from India's illegal actions of 5 August 2019. It rejected the newly notified Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Order 2020 and Jammu and Kashmir Grant of Domicile Certificate Rules 2020 that were enacted after 2019 and were aimed at changing the demographic structure of occupied Kashmir. OIC affirmed that Indian actions of 5 August 2019 and new domicile rules are in complete violation of the UN Security Council resolutions. Let me stress that no unilateral step by the government of India can change the disputed status of occupied Jammu and Kashmir as enshrined in the UN Security Council resolution. Pakistan is a responsible and peace-loving country. Accordingly, we have a vision of a peaceful neighborhood and desire to resolve all outstanding disputes, including the dispute of Jammu and Kashmir, peacefully through dialogue in accordance with the UN Security Council resolution and aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. However, Pakistan has demonstrated on many occasions that it not only has the capability but also the will to defend itself against any external aggression to the fullest satisfaction of the people of Pakistan. This was demonstrated on 27 February 2019 in response to Indian attack on Balakot a day earlier and last month in case of Iranian attack on Pakistan's sovereignty. Let me, in conclusion, talk about a few recent and relevant issues. The first is Indian terrorism in Pakistan. This has been happening for a long time and all of us are aware of that. But the important thing is that Pakistan kept informing the international community about Indian terrorism in Pakistan, but international community, for geopolitical reasons, did not pay any attention to this. As a result, India was emboldened and it started targeting nationals of Western countries, in particular 6 nationals of UK, Canada, and the US. Now they have woken up. Number 2, we know that while the foreign forces were in Afghanistan for about 2 decades, India was using its diplomatic missions in Afghanistan for fomenting terrorism in Pakistan. Again, we informed the international community about it, but they did not react. It has now dawned on them that India was also using its diplomatic missions in Canada, US, and UK, in particular Indian intelligence agency RAW, for targeting their 6 nationals. As a result, RAW's missions, after more than 65 years of operation in Ottawa, in Washington DC, in California, and London, have been closed. All RAW agents have been asked to leave for New Delhi. The third issue that Dr. Saib also talked about is targeting minorities in India as a result of Hindu nationalism, Hindu fanaticism, Hindutva ideology, etc. We all know that Ram Mandir has been constructed and inaugurated in place of 5 centuries old Babri Mosque, which was destroyed in 1992, 2 days ago, and that has encouraged Hindu fanatics to expand their envelope. 2 days ago, a 6 centuries old mosque in New Delhi was bulldozed. This will continue. That's how people look at it. But this is a very serious matter. Brutalizing minorities, particularly Muslims in India, can have serious consequences. You would recall that when Prime Minister Modi was paying official state visit to the US last year in June, and the US president was giving him red carpet treatment. The former US President Obama went on CNN to give an interview in which he said something very serious. He said that India must stop brutalizing minorities, particularly Muslim minorities. If it does not, at some point, it would start to pull apart. This is a very serious statement on the part of a former president who served 2 terms. It appears that India has not learned any lessons and it has not taken that statement seriously. India is a nuclear weapon state of 1.4 billion people. If something happens there, it will be disastrous, not just for India, but also for this region and the entire world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador, for such an enlightening talk. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our final speaker of the session, Professor Dr. Rizwan Zeb. Rizwan Zeb is Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies and Directing Staff Research at the AWCI College Institute, Karachi. He is a mastermind for the National Security Term and the Nuclear Phase of the AWCI course. He is Associate Editor, Journal of Asian Security and International Affairs. His area of academic interest includes South Asian strategic stability issues and particular focus on Pakistan security. He has taught and tutored at various universities, including National Defense University, Qazi University, Air University, Fatma Jannah University, Murdoch University, and University of Western Australia. Sir, it is our privilege to have you here. Please.
Assalamu alaikum, and we still have 40 minutes, so good morning as well. I think first of all I should thank the organizers for not only organizing together an event where there are 3 organizers, but also for the fact that they then invited a speaker from a 4th institution, which is also a first. So let me also thank you for that. It's a privilege to be here, especially because all the panelists and Dr. Saeed, we have long associations. I will not let you know how long me and Dr. Huma know each other. I'll keep you guessing, otherwise you will know who is senior among us. Having said that, I think coming at the 3rd place has put me on a very disadvantageous position. I don't know how many of you are actually fans of Arabic poetry, but the Hamasa ka ek sher hai, jiska loosely translation है, when he started speaking, everyone had no option but to listen. And when he, in this case, he stopped, there was nothing left to say. So I'm like standing in front of you as a tail ender who already knows that their team has done his job. So he has 2 options. Either to get clean bowled or wait for the captain to declare the innings. But because I'm also a professor and I earn my living by talking, so I will still make my points. So bear with me. Having said that, there are 2 disclaimers in offering. One, whatever I'm about to say in next 10 to 15 odd minutes are my personal view, and they should not be attributed to the organization that I represent. And second, please keep in mind that I am a structural realist. I assume that the students sitting at the back, they know what this orientation means. So whatever I'm about to say, keep that context in mind. Now, when you look at the Kashmir problem, there are more than one ways of looking at it. But the most important way of looking at it is it is the oldest hurting stalemate of modern conflicts. The problem with it is that hurting stalemate is not mutual, or it is partially mutual. More about this in a minute. So I'll be talking about Modi's Kashmir strategy. Is there a method to the madness? And due to the paucity of time, I will only flag few points. You have already been told in August 2019, Article 370 and 335A were revoked. It was a significant development. One cannot deny that. But this doesn't imply that everything was okay in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Our stated position as a party to the conflict, as it has been already pointed out, was that there is something fundamentally wrong in what is happening in Kashmir, even prior to that. So let's be very clear on that the problem didn't start in 2019, and it didn't just came up out of nowhere. There is a historical context to that. And it has more than one ways or more than one perception. So what exactly Article 370 was? It was granting a special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, having their own constitution, having their own flag, and only with defense, commerce, and foreign affairs to be handled by New Delhi. And Article 35A was about the fact that no non-Kashmiri can actually permanently settle in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and buy property and all that. Why I'm saying this? I'm saying this because what we know today as the freedom struggle started prior to that, 1989. There was no revocation of this article. It was there. More than 800,000 Indian troops were positioned in the valley prior to that. So let's keep this in mind. This is just the next stage of a conflict, which I said is one of the oldest conflicts on the agenda of the United Nations. This context is very important to understand what Modi did and why he did. So all what happened on 2019, August 5, is that this special status was ripped off from Kashmir. And now it became a centrally governed territory, divided into two union territories, with Ladakh being without legislature and Jammu and Kashmir with legislature. And 35A was changed, and now people from outside Kashmir can not only settle there, but they can also buy property. The idea behind that was to change the demography. But if you look at this, demographies don't change in 5 years or 10 years. So the impact that was required or was assumed or is aimed to be generated is generational. So a long-term action. And the last time I checked, more than 35 lakh non-Kashmiris have been given the domicile status. And if you look at the document, the Indian soldiers were positioned there and the migrant laborers, more than 500,000, both of them are now also, both groups are now eligible for the domicile status. So just imagine how the demography in the valley will change if even half of these, or even 10% of these, get the domicile. And this is with another provision that gives the Indian Army a legal right to declare any land as strategic and then take it over. So how you can make sense of what Modi did in August 2019? There are two ways of looking at it, or you can study it from two different angles. One is the internal political situation or the domestic politics in India, and second is obviously regional and international. So what this action actually projected to the Indians, or how it played within the Indian political scenario. It projected Congress as weak, something that they couldn't do in the resolution of the problem, and that Modi has, if you allow me to say, the guts to do what Nehru's and their likes couldn't do it, even Vajpayee couldn't do it. So he's the man. This was another feather in the cap of Hindu nationalism. On the regional and international level, it was also aimed at Pakistan, which is a party to the conflict, as well as to the rest of the world. So then this brings us to the next question. Why in 2019? How and why Modi did what he did in 2019? There is an understanding in India, Indian strategic circles, especially Modi's camp. Any action that you take under the guise of countering terrorism and related to national security would hardly provoke any reaction from the international community. That was lesson number one for them. Where is the evidence of this? You have to go back to 2014, the so-called surgical strike on Pakistan. What was the reaction of the international community on that? No one questioned its veracity. Then, second evidence, 2019, Pulwama crisis, the Balakot strike. Just look at how the Americans and the other power centers reacted to the Indian attack in Balakot. However, it changed after Pakistan's Operation Sifrul Dog. And that is because, in this case, Pakistan opted to respond. That was lesson number two. How it affected Modi's political prospects, you all know. He won with a landslide victory in the elections and had the majority that he needed to make such a change in the Indian constitution. That was lesson number three. Internationally, what was happening at the time that Modi capitalized on? Around that time, United States of America recognized Golan Heights as an Israeli territory. If you're familiar with the conflict in the Middle East and the saying that you cannot have a war without Syria and peace without Egypt, and what is the significance of Golan Heights, in that you would understand the significance of the decision. On the other side of the globe, Russia claimed and annexed Crimea. China was busy in the political outbreak in Hong Kong. Domestically, the opposition was weak, disoriented, disorganized. Modi was the man who could do what no other Indian leader could have done. And this is exactly what he did. So he capitalized on the international and regional and domestic environment. So what is the lesson here? You cannot take decisions without taking into consideration all these factors. If they are there, good enough. Otherwise, you make sure that they are conducive enough. Now, a lot has already been said about the effects of it, what the Pakistani case is, how it affects the Kashmir problem overall. I would not repeat that. I would save a little bit time more for question answers. I assume there would be. So instead of repeating what you all have already heard, I will straight away go to the point. What are the likely effects of this on the Pakistani case and position? Does it fundamentally alter the Kashmir problem and its conflict? As Ambassador Saab has already informed the House, that whatever the Indians are doing in Kashmir have no effect whatsoever on its international position, on the Pakistani legal case on Kashmir, and everything on that stays. And whenever it will go to the level where it will be discussed, as it has already been pointed out, all of these would be taken as null and void. But this actually shows you the mindset, how to make a certain party to the conflict irrelevant, and how the international community accepts all these actions. Now link it with me saying that I'm a structural realist, and then you can understand what I'm trying to tell you. If this is how international system and international society operates, and this is how you capitalize on your whatever policy options you have in the brownie points you have. So what are the options that Pakistan has? There are many, but we know about them. We all know, we all have opinions about it, but I think two are the most pertinent ones, and we should talk more about it. Almost 2 decades ago, my mentor, Steve Cohen, once said, in responding to a question that I asked him, Kashmir is not a TV war. This is something that Pakistan has never done. It's still not doing it. If we really want to project what is happening inside Kashmir, we have to make it a TV war. Images flashed on international media, especially on the screens, will have far more impact than having any other option exercise. Take a cue from what happened in 1991, which is normally now known as the first modern day TV war. That was the Gulf War, when Iraq occupied Kuwait. Related to this, I don't know whether it's still there or not, because I'm in Karachi for the last 3.5 years. When this happened in 2019, a clock or a counter was placed in a very prominent place in Islamabad. And it said like so many days and hours, the people in Kashmir are in a lockdown position. It had its impact. But just imagine if that clock was also in the Times Square in New York. What kind of impact would that have generated? We already know what's happening in Kashmir. We don't know. We should keep updated, but we don't just need to tell each other. We need to tell the world. And that is what we should do. Our legal case is strong, but there are things that we need to do, getting out of the box mentality. The second thing, if you look at my introduction, it says that I'm a Gordonian. We have a creed. It says, whoever you are, whatever you are, whatever you do, wherever you do, always remember you are a Godoni. So just replace the word Godoni with Pakistan. And then act as one. There are certain issues on which the only thing that it is visible is acting as one, developing a consensus, not politicizing it. Only then we can achieve our national goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor. It was such an enlightening talk. Ladies and gentlemen, now this concludes the session of speakers, and we will move forward for the question and answer session. So I would request all the esteemed guests to please come on stage for the question and answer session. Whoever has a question, please raise your hand and the mic will reach you. You can stand on your position and ask the question.
My question is for you. You talked about the geopolitical complexities at the end of your presentation. In the backdrop of geopolitical complexities, how should the present day Kashmiris envision their future movement? Thank you.
I think the geopolitical backdrop will continue to be there, and what India would want is that the Hurriyat should die, the resistance should die. But my submission here is fairly simple. Kashmir is not just between India and Pakistan. Kashmir issue is also between India and China. And during the latest Ladakh war, China took over Indian land, gave them a bloody nose, and the trade volumes between India and China have actually gone up. There is a land dispute between China and Russia, and they chose to put it on the back burner to overcome the geopolitical complexities. You know, Professor Zeb just talked about stalemate and hurting stalemates. Conflicts change their equation when it's a mutually hurting stalemate. कम या ज़्यादा उसको भी दुख हो और आपको भी दुख हो, फिर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट का स्ट्रक्चर चेंज होता है. कश्मीर में इंडिया का दुख कम होता जा रहा है, हमारा दुख बढ़ता जा रहा है. चाइना ने इंडिया का दुख बढ़ाया है और इंडिया को ये समझ में आया है कि इसको मजीद बढ़ाने में हमारा दुख. So that is the mutually hurting stalemate. It's a very, very interesting concept. So I think the geopolitical backdrop continues to favor India in the near future. And the fact that India has acquired this economic stature of almost a giant in the region, for us, it is a problem. For China continues to engage and also draw its red lines. हम red lines नहीं draw कर पा रहे. You know, Kashmir can become a TV boy, but what then? Isn't Gaza a TV boy? I mean, because of social media, the atrocities being committed by the Israelis in Gaza are showcased every single day to a point where I don't want to see them anymore. But at the end of the day, it hasn't changed the geopolitical equation. Ji, please. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Well, I couldn't agree more with what Dr. Saba has just said. The struggle, number one, should continue. The struggle for the right to self-determination must continue. Pakistan must continue to extend diplomatic, moral, and political support for this struggle at every forum at the international level. Let me add that for global powers, human rights struggles, etc., they do not mean much. They use these as instruments of their foreign policy. For example, because India has been maintaining its strategic autonomy since last year, we have seen that a lot of statements have come from Washington criticizing India's human rights record. Now, that was just to put pressure on India to abandon certain policies and start showing the Western line. I saw that as ambassador to Russia in 2017 during Trump administration, Prime Minister Modi was increasingly looking towards Washington and ignoring Russia. The Russian media went to the extent of saying that Kashmir was a disputed territory and that it should be resolved in accordance with the UN Security Council resolution. Then, when Modi didn't get much from Washington, he came back to Moscow, and there was a summit between the Russian president and Indian Prime Minister. And Indian media was saying that Modi had come to Russia to seek a reset in relation with Russia. Once he left, there was complete silence as far as Kashmir issue in Russian media is concerned. Thank you.
You have talked two things. One is the projection of conflict in media. And secondly, as we were talking about the time clock, which is installed in Islamabad, instead of talking to each other, we must talk to the world, so that the conflict should be highlighted in a better way. So my point is, wherever the media is playing their role, that is something. It is pertaining to the power, not the issue. Because if you talk about the Iraq, if you talk about the Afghanistan, once the media is highlighting the problems, then it is highlighted, it is reacted by the superpowers. So this is not only, in my humble opinion, this is not only the media which will be giving the impact, but it is the power in hand which will be giving impact. I'll be supplementing my argument with the point of view given by Dr. Baqai just now. Kashmir is same, and the part two, one is Pakistan and second is China. Issue is the same, but it is if you talk about the China, it is at the upper end now, but as far as Pakistan is concerned, it is lower. So, in my humble opinion, I would like to ask your opinion as well. कि क्या सिर्फ यही है कि मीडिया के प्रोजेक्शन से ही फायदा हो जाएगा, या instead of talking to each other, we communicate with the world, the problem will be resolved, or you have to have something in your hand to get the issue resolved.
That's a good question, but I think I'll flag 3 points here. First of all, I said there are many, but I'll only highlight 2. So I was acknowledging that there is more to be done, but let's focus the 2 which are neglected. You see, when I said make it a TV war, I was not talking about the overkill, as just Dr. Baqai said, overkill actually backfires. But even if it is an overkill in certain cases, look at what pressure Israel is feeling this time. This is not the first time that the Israelis are doing what they are doing. But this time, they are actually facing the brunt which they have never been before. That's absolutely fine. No one changes their opinion on what is being flashed on the media. But what happens in media is that it generates a debate in public opinion. In democracies, people vote, and they vote based on their informed opinions and understandings which they get out of what is being reported and projected in media. And we are talking about democracies there. When I said make it a TV war, I was not talking about make it a TV war, let's say in South Asia. You see, where it matters, where public opinion actually matters in decision making. And there are examples where this has happened. John Major, a former British Prime Minister, is on record that the British decided to intervene along with the Americans in certain conflicts because he watched a report on BBC. It's a long debate, and we can have it, but I think this is where I'll stop there. But this is the essence of the thing. The second thing is that, on the question of what more could be done other than this is, I don't want to market my book, but I have written a book on the mutual hurting stalemate, which actually talks about what needs to be done and how when, why. And it is not just written by me, it is actually co-authored by an Indian scholar. So you get both views. And I'm not the only one who has done it. A lot is already there. It's only that whether the willingness to sit together is there or not. Sometimes when one side is not willing to sit with you, you have to make the other side sit with you. For that, you have to do few things.
Where do you see conflict? So, last question, where do you see the conflict that we are still Kashmir issue?
What was my starting point? It's a longest hurting stalemate in modern history. That's my answer to your question. It's a stalemate. Thank you.
The parallel between Israel and Kashmir. So I would want you enlighten us that if in the future we see Pakistan establishing diplomatic ties with Israel, so does that mean that Pakistan is compromising on its stance on Kashmir?
There is nothing coming out of Foreign Office that would indicate that Pakistan is going to recognize Israel. And if it was going to happen, if there was a debate, it has been completely quashed by what has happened now. So I don't think any time in the future, at least not in my lifetime, I don't see Israel being recognized. Because, Arab countries who were going to go into economic convergence with Israel have also put it on the hold. So that is not happening. But at the same time, I continue to say this, that the Palestinization of Kashmir is a reality now. Because what Israel has done has definitely emboldened India and the Modi government more specifically. So there's one sentence that I always use, and I continue to say this. We need to understand that India is much larger than Modi. To just see India through the Modi lens is a flawed paradigm. India ko bedi India dalega. Yes.
Let me add a few words to this. I completely agree with Dr. Saeed that nothing on the table with regard to recognition of Israel from our side. But you would recall that many years ago, during late President Musharraf's rule, our foreign minister, that is Foreign Minister of Pakistan and Israel, had met in Istanbul. And there was a move to slowly and gradually move in a direction where we could eventually recognize Israel. But we withheld that because of Saudi peace plan, that is land for peace. And then what the Israelis did to make Yasser Arafat, they had completely destroyed his office, and then he was taken to die. Very bad. I would like to recall here the Saudi statement that was made a few days ago, that they can consider recognizing Israel if the Palestinian issue, in particular the two-state solution, is agreed to. So, if two-state solution becomes reality, then the Arab countries that have not yet recognized Israel, they will also recognize. Then Pakistan will also have no objection to that thing.
Israel was on the verge of ending its diplomatic isolation. Like I said, Palestine ने अपनी resistance की बका के लिए ये खुदकुश हमला किया. अगर ये हमला ना होता, अगर 7 अक्टूबर ना होती, तो इस वक्त मिडिल ईस्टर्न पॉलिटिक्स बहुत मुख्तलिफ है. और उस मिडिल ईस्टर्न पॉलिटिक्स को फॉलो करते हुए शायद पाकिस्तान में recognition of Israel would have been far more acceptable. देखिए सऊदी अरब एक्सेप्ट कर लेता तो हमारे लिए भी आसान हो जाता ना. लेकिन अब मुझे नहीं लगता कि नियर फ्यूचर में इसकी, क्योंकि सऊदी अरब ने भी सब कुछ होल्ड पे डाला है. यूएई के साथ अभी भी कोलैबोरेशंस हैं, बट देयर आर डिफिकल्टीज.
I just want to add one thing in that. You're a student of 7th semester, you said?
7th semester.
Okay. Ask yourself this question. why states recognize each other and establish diplomatic relations, and then find an answer to this question. What is the mutuality of interest that would be achieved by such an action? It's not just like we recognize state A, B, or C because we just want to do it, or maybe we are hungover or something. There are solid reasons for doing that. So out of the 4 W's, why is always the most important? So ask yourself, why would Pakistan do that? Thank you very much.
My question is related to Dr. Baqai. Ma'am, you just have mentioned that India is larger than MoDI. So I just want to ask one thing, that do you see any major shift in India's Kashmir policy if any other political party rather than BJP come into power?
There will be dilution of saffronization, but at the same time, I don't see another party coming. Modi winning the next elections is almost a given, and because of his long stay in power, 2 terms, he's been able to, and prior to that Gujarat, he's been able to actually tentaclize, we actually use that term, tentaclize saffronization. तो जो tentacles हैं इसके वो इतने फैल गए हैं कि उनको दोबारा समेटना बहुत मुश्किल है. For example, the Indian media. I mean, there's not just the saffronization of judiciary and academia, it is also the Indian media. The hyper-nationalistic Indian media is now anybody with the same voice is culled out or attacked. The same is true for Congress. Congress also had threads of saffronization. Indira Gandhi had started accepting it. She was not the secular Nehru dynasty leader, so to say. But he has taken it to a level कि रिवर्सल बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगी. देखिए, मैं आपको एक मिसाल दूंगी जो आप में से किसी को अच्छी नहीं लगेगी. जो ज़ियाउल हक करके गया ना इस मुल्क के साथ, वो आज तक रिवर्स नहीं हुआ. तो जो एक्सट्रीमिज्म इंडिया में है वो ज़ियाउल हक से बहुत आगे है. तो रिवर्सल्स बहुत मुश्किल.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's indeed a pleasure and honor for my IL program in particular and DHA Suffa University in general to have Ambassador Sir, Executive Director of the CISSS, very well respected and well read Dr. Huma Baqai, Director of MiTE, and of course the and last but not least Dr. Zeb, जिनके साथ मेरी बहुत पुरानी association and the kind of words and the kind of presentation he did at Chancellor. So it was all free to listen. If I just conclude what has been said today, so without any amazing, let me just say, in 1948 में ये इशू शुरू हुआ कश्मीर को, फौरन बाद कहा गया प्लेबिसाइट होगा, यूएन में रेजोल्यूशन आ गई, 48, 49 में कुछ ना हुआ, 49 में आर्टिकल 370 को लाया गया, इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का हिस्सा बनाया गया कि हम प्लेबिसाइट करेंगे और इंडिया कश्मीर की सेपरेट आइडेंटिटी, लेस कम्युनिकेशन, डिफेंस एंड फॉरेन पॉलिसी, इनकी अपनी लॉज होंगी, अपना कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आएगा, फिक्र न करें हम इसको प्लेबिसाइट करने जा रहे हैं, हालात थोड़े ठीक हो जाए. और नाउ बिकॉज इंडियंस आर ऑलवेज नोन फॉर बेटरेड्स. रिलेशन डेवलप हुआ 1954 में, उन्होंने कहा चलो चलते हैं, करते हैं आर्टिकल 35A को कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन